Okay, so my name is Lucy Galik, and I'm an iOS engineer at Monzo. And I've joined almost a year ago, and actually right in time to start building the Monzo design system. But the story starts a bit earlier than that. Roughly summer last year, one of our engineers kind of realizes that maybe UIKit is self-deprecated by Apple. And maybe it's time to embrace the future and have a look at SwiftUI. And if someone realizes something like this at Monzo and they want to do something about it, they always start with a proposal. So a proposal, before I joined Monzo, I thought it was generally a waste of time because I'm dyslexic. I don't like typing. Like, you're not going to make me do this, right? Like, please, it's a disability. Okay? But now I'm actually way more on board with it. I think it's a great tool to clarify your thinking, to get your point across, and also a great way to get buy-in and feedback. So that's how it started. And the proposal was quite detailed, but one of the most important things is a project of a size where it actually deserves a working group. And that's what we do for projects like this. We get a group of people. In our case, that was 6 of us, I think. We would meet once a week, keep ourselves accountable, have a little Kanban board, a Slack channel, and whatnot. But before that happened, we did a very Monzo thing. So you might know that we are quite user-centric, and we're really obsessed about user experience. And you might be thinking, hey, wait, you're writing a framework, like internal tool, but these are still users after all. So we did what you should do when you want to have good user experience. We get some user research done, and that was in the form of a workshop. So people were put into a fig jam and asked what they particularly liked about our existing design system in UIKit, what they didn't like, what their hopes were. And from that, we got our guiding principles that we try to adhere to when building the thing. And I'll quickly run you through them. So first problem, it's really difficult to know, as it is currently, what actually we have in the UIKit version. We have a little channel on Slack. Everything at Monzo is basically Slack-based. And it's dedicated to this design system. Like, half of the questions is a screenshot, and someone said, is it built, and what's the name? So it's really difficult for engineers to actually know what is available for them. And it requires someone's memory to tell you what to do. So that was one problem. There were a few nice things identified that we really wanted to keep going forward, like themes or fonts or colors, and a few components that were kind of given to us as golden standard. There was real push towards purity, so no UIKit allowed. That was a bit of a weird one for me when I joined, but yeah, that's what the team decided. And as you might know, we want to make money work for everyone, and by that we actually mean everyone. So we are very passionate about accessibility, and we wanted to build everything with accessibility in mind from the get-go. And there was request not to over-engineer and keep things simple and easy to use. So the idea that the common things should be really easy and the less common things should still be possible. And there was a request to make the API limited in a way where it would only allow the valid use cases from the point of view of the design system. So the request was to have some kind of validation within the API. So now I'll walk you through each of them separately and show you how well it went or not. So that was fairly an easy one. We started with saying that we want first-class documentation, and that meant there's no excuse in a PR to say, yeah, you know, but yeah, next and follow up, I will surely. No. Like, no documentation, no merging, thank you. So that's scared quite a lot of people off. Then the naming, as you've heard, we have a bit of a naming problem with our current system where it's difficult to say what something is called. So we had a brilliant idea to start, as in, if it's called a large button in Figma, it's going to be called a large button in our project. If it's an info card, it's going to be called an info card, which worked amazingly well for the first 4 components. And then there was a component called button, and a component called slider, and a component called toggle. And we're like, yeah. So that, we gavelled a bit, which is also a thing we do at Monzo. So we had a few ideas. I wanted MDS because it's kind of nice, cool, and bit, you know, like kind of retro, like a Polaroid camera or something. But apparently everyone has got PTSD from Objective-C, so we went for Monzo as a prefix. So now we have Monzo large button and Monzo toggle and so on. Hopefully it will help with the mental mapping, not as perfect as we wanted, but pragmatic. Another thing, we've got a demo app, so that should help not only developers but also designers realize what's actually implemented. It's distributed internally, which means that they can get it on their phones and also see how animations work, haptics and so on. It's quite a nice tool. Also, no merging unless you add your component to the demo app. We're a bit strict. We decided that previews, I'm like not a big fan of maintaining previews long time because it is a bit of a cost, but we decided it would probably be the place where developers would go to look for components. So we decided to include those as well, and we were quite clever, and we built them in a way which would allow us to use them for snapshot tests as well, which is quite a nice win. And the last point was structure. So Figma has got like little boxes where components sit together and they're named. So there's a container for buttons, and there's a container for text fields, and there's a container for credit cards because we're a bank, so we need that. And so we try to keep the structure going, so all the folders in our project reflect the boxes in Figma, and all the sections in our demo app also reflect the same layout, so hopefully it will be easy to find. One more part of the structure in Figma is that we have one file, which is the design system, and then we have another file, which is the foundations. And that's what we realize is the good stuff that we want to keep from the other system, is the foundational bits. So we started a very surgical operation of cutting that stuff out of the module containing the current UI kit design system into a new module, because then we wanted the two of them to depend on the foundation bits. It took a month. I don't know if that's a lot or not. I think it was quite a lot. I think we made one mistake, as we got it exported import quite late in the game. So we had lots and lots of PRs with just hundreds of lines of extra inputs. Yeah, I do recommend, because it was not easy to read them. Another thing that everyone is really happy with in the iOS team is the themes we have. So it's an entity a bit more complex than just light and dark mode. They depend on the product you're using. There's some accessibility themes as well. So we needed a way to port theme into SwiftUI. What we do currently, we inject it each and every time into a UI kit view. So developers are kind of expecting it to be passed into the initializer. So we subclass the UI hosting controller to be able to do that, and then we inject it further down as an environment. And preparing for this talk, I was actually amazingly surprised that was the first piece of work after we've removed stuff that was ever done, and it kind of stayed like this. I mean, this grew a lot, but it's still in use today. Yeah, no UI kit. That is the one I had a bit of a problem with. So as you can probably see from my previous things I said, we kept UI colors and we kept UI fonts. We did manage to stay away from wrapping existing components in UI view representable, which I think is a massive win and allowed us to rethink the interfaces and do things maybe better this time and more in line with SwiftUI. But then I realized preparing this talk that actually there was one place where we struggled with the no UI kit rule, and the place where UI kit really hides very well within the team is inside our brains. So we do want to embrace SwiftUI, but our thinking is still, unfortunately, really influenced by UI kit. And that is actually an example from a PR from a couple of days ago. So there's a tendency when we get new contributors to pass in is enabled and is loading into the initializer instead of going the SwiftUI way and using the environment. So that's one challenge. Another challenge, my absolute favorite, is people insisting on view models, which I guess kind of maybe makes sense in UIKit world to pack up that data you want to pass into a view. But for me, you could literally get a view model conform to view and make it into a view. So I would say, don't fool yourself, and yeah, just make a view. And the last and maybe most important one is the styles. So I'm sure a lot of you have seen in UIKit style as a enum, and then you switch over it to get the color, the font and whatnot. A way better way to do that in SwiftUI is with the built-in styles like button style, which kind of I like it because it lets you separate the behavior from the styling, so you can understand each in isolation. So it's like less complexity there. Some people complain that they do like the enums, and it makes it so easy to pass in. So I would say just define your most used styles in an extension and you get the same interface as you would with an enum. What we liked about this approach as well is that it is really good for accessibility. So you still keep all of the accessibility features of a button. It just looks slightly different, but for a screen reader or voice control, it's still the same object. Which brings us to accessibility, our one of our main goals. So there were moments where we struggled with adapting SwiftUI styles to an extent where we had to give up on it. And accessibility representation saved our life a couple of times. I don't know if you've used it. I absolutely love it. It allows you to do the most outlandish UI and then just tell the system, yeah, and by the way, for accessibility, this is just a slider. Don't tell anyone, but yeah, that's what it is. So that was a massive win for us. What I think did wrong was we put so much pressure on accessibility that when we got people coming in to help with a ticket or two, they were so terrorized by our approach to accessibility that they would just put accessibility labels in random places just because accessibility was so important, and it was accessibility first, so why not put a label? And when I did a few months in, I did an audit and realized that this thing actually reads out the accessibility label 3 times. So it's not much of a help to a person who needs it. So what we should be doing instead is either adding a label to the illustration, or if the illustration has actually no meaning and is there just for show, we could just hide it from accessibility. But definitely don't put accessibility labels on stacks. It's not a good idea. Another less problematic example is just putting accessibility labels when they're not needed. So SwiftUI can infer that for you. So just make it simple and remove it. The results will be exactly the same. So that's simplicity. So yeah, keep it simple. So the idea was not to over-engineer. So I'll show you an example. So if, we have a view called a footer, and it can have a prompt or a callout or neither. And it has at least one button, but maybe two. And maybe they're horizontally arranged, and maybe they're vertically arranged. So in that form, you cannot make sure that this is a correct setup according to the design system. So what we did, we started putting in initializers that would let us make sure that you're doing the correct thing while keeping the actual implementation quite simple, not too, extremely simple. So that gets us to the limited API thing. So this is what we were essentially asked for in the first workshop, to make sure that what you do, you can do is only what is allowed in the design system. Brilliant. I implemented this. It's brilliant. I needed to use it the next week. It doesn't work. Right? Because then I realized, but I need to disable the button. When I disable the button, it's not a large button anymore because it's a modified large button. So actually, Swift type safety won't let me pass it in anymore. So this is a bit awkward, right? I need to write UI tests, and I can't add an ID to this. So this is brilliant. This is exactly what we're asked to do, but that won't work, right? So we had to give up and embrace the view builders. So what we did with this is essentially you could put anything into top and bottom, but we documented it saying, and you need to put a large button in here. So maybe if you're a nice person, you're not going to try. And then at the end of the day, we think you're probably a reasonable human being, right? And you want to create a good UI, so maybe, it's not that much of a problem. So yeah, that's where we're at. So, am I too quick? Probably am. Anyway. A few takeaways. Have a plan and write it down. And I say this as a dyslexic, so do trust me on that. Create a team. You will learn together. You will keep each other accountable. You will have a good time together. Know your user. But please, please don't take at face value what they tell you. Because you should ask users about what they like and what they don't like, but don't ask them for solutions. They're not there to find solutions for you. And have some guidelines to guide you, to help you. If there's a conflict in a PR, you might say, well, we decided we actually want to go quick and tech debt is fine. Let's not look into that now, because we want to deliver this fast. It's fine, whatever your guidelines are. Follow them. But once you find out that they're actually, not working, get together and change them. And that's it from me. Thank you. Yeah?
So it sounds like it's quite a big change, both technically for people, but mentally, because it's changing exactly kind of a lot of how they're working. How was the rollout across the organization? It's quite a big organization with this change.
So that is a great question. So this is season 1,
right.
But we were booked for season 2. We're actually on the verge of adapting it widely. We had, I don't know how many, maybe 12 small projects built in it so far. yeah, we did find a lot of rough edges, like the fact that you can't disable a button, for example, which didn't occur to us before. So the challenge is, I think from next week or in 2 weeks, we should be adopting this for all new features. So now it's a matter of spreading the knowledge.
Looking forward to that big rollout, or is it kind of?
Oh, I'm going on holiday, so. Yeah.
Did you look at any kind of similar tooling in other areas? I mean, storybook for React that does part of this design system, or did you just kind of look at the Swift from the ground up?
I think for me personally is the file where SwiftUI interface is defined is like the Bible to how to do great design. Also in looking at which interfaces were deprecated along the line and what replaced them. So it shows you what actually doesn't work and needs something new. We didn't want to have too wide of an inspiration because we wanted to feel very much at home in SwiftUI. So if someone joins who already worked in SwiftUI, we won't need to onboard them to our weird version of SwiftUI, but equally, if someone decides to leave Monzo and go somewhere else, they still have like valuable skills, right? And not that they learn some kind of weird in-house build thing that is not used by anyone else. So we mostly stuck to SwiftUI.
Is this kind of a first for Monzo, and are Android thinking of doing the same on their side?
Android have gone through that, I think maybe 2 years ago. I think it's a different story. So because we're a bank, and I don't know if you've heard, but we're also not on the high street. We're only on your phone. It's kind of a challenge for us to drop old versions of iOS. So at the time the proposal was written, we were still supporting iOS 13, which was the first version with SwiftUI, for those of you who are not iOS developers, and a very immature version as well. We found iOS 14 absolutely impossible to work with and had to actually drop iOS 14 support for design system, which makes me think I've halfway forgot what the intro was to. What
Relate to Android.
Yeah. So in iOS it's difficult because we can never ship things back, as in it's always for the newest things. So Android had a bit of an easier one, but I don't think they're fully migrated. But they definitely are in the new universe for new things.
You said that you use Figma. Like, do you just export it directly from Figma, or do you like store the JSON in a central repo somewhere? If there's any changes, then you update that, or how does that kind of side of things work?
Oh, we don't know yet. I think like midway through the project, we're like, oh, let's open Figma and see how far we've. Oh, there's so much new stuff in here. So we still haven't figured that one out.
We've got a few questions on Slido. So the first one is, can we see the design system demo app?
Yeah, probably.
And the follow-up question is, will you? So these are the containers that match Figma. And then I don't know, we have InfoCard, which is something like this, in different flavors. And we always have the name that you can copy and paste into Xcode. Money is quite a nice one. You can change, you can check out our cool animation, have different types of typography. What else? Sizes, it is, yeah. You don't want a currency symbol, you do want one, you want it highlighted, you don't want a separator, everything. This is actually super cool component, yeah. Can I ask sorry, we've got
Sorry, there's another one. there like a separate, how do you take it from, this looks really cool, when should they be using each of those toggled values, when should they not be, what context should these settings be, is there like a separate supporting documentation that they can find?
I think it's, so there's quite extensive documentation on the component itself, but at the end of the day, it's more of a product and design decision than developer decision which settings you go for.
What's decided to be the source of truth for UI? Is it this app or is it Figma? Like when it comes to like a design or a feature, what considerations are made? Is it pro like UI kit or?
I think for designers it's Figma, for us it's our code base.
If it's like mapped onto one, is it quite simple?
For now it is, and I hope we can keep it like this. But yeah, that is coming up in season 2. I can tell you in a year from now how well that works, because we still don't know.
One question from me is how much does an engineer contribute to the style kit versus the actual feature? And sort of a follow-up question around, is there a consistent sort of team constantly curating the design system, or is it sort of owned by everyone? If that makes sense.
So at this moment, this is owned by the working group, and it is going to be transferred to a team called UpEvo at some point, and they are going to own it going forward.
Will you be in that team?
No, I'm in a completely different part of the company, but yeah.
Thank you. A few more questions. So, do you use accessibility identifiers? If so, how do you manage the accessibility identifiers? Do you use raw strings, or are they synced across platforms?
They're not synced across platforms. They are either raw strings or it's a bit complicated because we have a lot of backend driven views, and that complicates our accessibility identifiers a lot. Yeah, but they are mostly strings and not synced. Is this awkward?
We'll edit this out a bit. Follow-up question then. So, how does this fit in with server-driven UI? You sort of mentioned there about putting your backend parallel.
So we have one project of server-driven UI delivered in SwiftUI and composable architecture, and it's our story component. We face some challenges because the styles we have defined on buttons, for example, use key paths to the theme, while now we had colors coming straight from the backend. So we had to fight a bit with the system. But it was a nice test case to know where the rough edges are.
So there was some refinement after that then?
Yeah. So we basically, we kind of did something else, then we gathered, we thought about things, we thought like, let's tweak. So we tweaked, we moved forward, then we decided to something else, so we tweaked. That's how we went.
One more on accessibility. How do you document accessibility?
I don't know if we actually document. We have a bit of a shift going on with designers. There was a massive audit, and they were made more aware of different accessibility features and needs. So it's now less driven by developers, more driven by design. So I would expect it will be more of a thing for Figma going forward. I don't think it's properly documented, to be honest.
Okay. We'll have you back for season 2. Okay, so does the new design library support back to iOS 14 as the main Monzo app? And has this been challenging? That felt like a loaded question, actually.
Yeah. Where do I start? So we're kind of super eager to support iOS 14, mostly because we thought people will not want to adopt it because they would need to go to a product manager and say, oh, can we only build it for 15 plus? And then probably, not necessarily, So we really, for a long time, we pushed with iOS 14. Well, we got to a point where Oliver implemented a date picker. And then we realized, I knew there are iOS 14 bugs with date picker on SwiftUI. And then we realized there's no simulator for iOS 14 that we can use. We also don't have a single device running iOS 14. Then we had a major incident that was iOS 14 only, and someone had to sign in with a magic link through browser stack. And then we decided this is actually maybe not a good direction. And yeah, we had a lot of meetings, a lot of going back and forth. It ended up in a meeting with the CPO who said, yeah, cool. So we dropped iOS 14, which is not too bad because we're dropping iOS 14 for the whole app next week or in 2 weeks' time, something like that. So yeah, and we're actually ready with 15 as we're moving to 15 being the minimum version.
Just about the ways of working, so you mentioned the working group a few times. Is this something that you've worked on full time, or is it, side of desk, or is it somewhere in between those things?
I think about them as side quests. Yeah, it's a bit of that. It's a bit of a distraction from your squad work, and if you're not a reasonable person like we are, then you get involved in a few too many of those.
One last question from Slido. How do you handle dynamic changes to designs, e.g. variations based on device?
That's what SwiftUI is there for, I think. As in, it adapts mostly. I don't think we had any problems so far that we're aware of. Yeah.
We have layout that fits. So there's some SwiftUI types you can use that change depending on screen width and have you not.
Yeah, but I think most of our designs are quite reasonable in the sense that you suddenly you don't have to go like, and how is that going to fit on an SE? It usually does fit on an SE. So I guess designers are doing a good job.
Fantastic. One last question from me. So you've kind of given us a bit of a glimpse as to season 2.
Yeah.
Will you come back?
Yeah.
When season 2?
Yeah, of course.
When you're launching the premiere, perhaps. Well, what is the roadmap? What does good look like? When will you be, at a point where this is sort of ready to go?
It's a philosophical question. I was thinking whether I should talk about this, and I kind of feel like design system is a journey, not a destination. So we will never actually arrive. It's an ongoing project, and it will never be finished. And maybe that's the thing we realize halfway through, looking at Figma and all the new stuff in there, that, yeah, there's always more work going to be coming our way. So yeah, there's no done here.
It's very profound, I think. We can't get any more profound than that. Any more questions for Lucy? Oh, okay, thank you very much, Lucy.
Thank you.